Welcome back to the Differential Show. It has felt like forever. International breaks are not my friend at all. But on this episode, I will go over my top 6 players for each position going into Week 9, my transfer options for the week, and some possible punts for Game Week 10 wildcarders. But first, make sure you press that subscribe button. So let's get right into it. You can see my top 6 right there for forwards, midfielders, and defenders. I'm just going to talk a little bit about the ones that stand out. Watkins, I had below Alvarez, but as I look forward, I'm looking at just the fixtures and that he is cemented in that team where Alvarez at some point is going to be rotated. We can see that Watkins, now he has a tricky one next where he has West Ham, so maybe this week is not the best week to transfer in a player unless you have 2 free transfers and you don't want to burn one. But then he has Luton home, Forest away, Fulham home. So an excellent run. He's the main guy there. He's up top. He has haul ability. So he has just moved a tad ahead of Alvarez. Still like Alvarez if you have him. If you have him, it's a solid hold. I don't feel like it needs to be like you have to go get Watkins. Diaby is a good replacement in mid for that. But for right now, I've just swapped the two. I really like Isak. He's just a differential, basically, because there's not a lot of options anymore at forward. Most of the FPL teams that you're going to see out there are going to be a 3-5-2. There was a slight change of like a 3-4-3 when we had some other players performing well. But right now, even below that, Darwin has picked up some, they said he's cramping. Not totally sure if there's like an injury involved there. We got a flight situation when he comes back. So there's a possibility he might not even start or might not play at all. So that's a concern because he's on my team. And then Solanke on there. He's just, if you're going 3 forwards, maybe that's someone you would look at. Other players I want to talk about are just Salah. We know about Salah. His fixture run's incredible. He's got Everton at home, Forest home, Luton away, and then Brentford home. So 3 out of 4 at home. And we all know how well Salah does. It's kind of scary to go without him, but isn't it kind of scary to go without Haaland too? And a lot of us are doing that. So it's something to think about. There's not someone that can cover Haaland. Diaz, Darwin, none of them are going to cover him. So Salah is going to be the guy. He's kind of worth the extra funds to bring him in because he will eventually be your captain for most weeks. And some other ones I'm going to talk about, just Saka. He still has the flag on him. I would expect him to be fit going into this week. I'm not concerned about having him this week. It's really game week 10 where a lot of us are going to be wildcarding because that's when the fixtures change for some main groups like West Ham. I talked about Arsenal, Brighton. Those when you want those players from those teams. Odegaard, kind of just a sneaky differential down there. I know he's in 6. He's a player I will consider if I don't go if I don't go Salah, which I already have Haaland. For the defenders, the one I want to kind of talk about just quickly is Ben White. I have not heard a lot of people talk about Ben White based off of price. A lot of us are looking at Saliba and Gabriel, but Ben White's actually getting the returns that they are not getting. So if you do have some extra funds and you're looking to wild card, if you want a sneaky differential, save a little bit and go for Ben White. He has been very consistent this season. And before I go on to my team reveal / let's look at some transfer options, I just want to kind of point out the teams we want to focus on and then why. So I've got it listed here. I'm just going to read it off in front of me. The top 5 teams just based off of scoring altogether. So Brighton, 21 goals. Newcastle, 20. Aston Villa, 19. Liverpool, 18. Tottenham, 18. Notice no Man City in there. So things you want to think about. We want to target players for teams that score goals, right? Brighton. Interesting fact about them because I want to look down here at the goals against teams. Sheffield United, 22. We all know they're awful. That's the team you want to target if you're going to be fixture based, right? Then Burnley at 20. Bournemouth at 18. Brighton at 16. So you got Brighton, who's the top team at scoring, but also the 4th worst team against. So it's a team you target offensively, but you also want their offensive players. You don't see this a lot. And something that's very unique, because the game week 10 wild card could possibly have some Brighton players in. I know Matoma right now has a flag. I would be interested in thinking about bringing him in game week 10 or 11 because their fixtures look mighty good. And then just some other facts is that the top 5 teams of goals against, so if we're thinking about shutouts, so Arsenal 6 goals against, City 6, Crystal Palace, which I've told you about, are Anderson, right? Only 7 goals against. Chelsea 7 goals against, but they have awful fixtures, wouldn't even target them at all. And then Tottenham at 8. So sometimes we need to look at the actual data and not just assume who the good teams are offensively and defensively. So right now let's take a look at my game week 9 team. So looking at my team, starting with goalkeeper, there's no change. I've committed to Ederson, so he's staying back there. I do like the fixture against Brighton. It's going to be quite difficult to get a shutout against them because they do seem to score at least 1 goal every game. Anderson's a tricky one. He's got Newcastle away, but he's a solid hold for my team. Udagi, he has a good fixture run, a slight little fixture run coming up, so he's also a good hold. I have him as a good value because I got him earlier. And then Trippier, Crystal Palace away. Crystal Palace at home. They don't score a lot. I could see a double-digit haul. And if you're really, really willing to risk it, captaincy. Could Trippier be a good captain this week? Because not everyone has him. The teams that have fit in Salah don't have him. He's a safe pick because if you're thinking that Crystal Palace will score, who do they have? They don't have Eze. They don't have Elise. They got Edouard, right? I still like Diaz. Not a lot of people have him. Brighton, like I said, it's going to be a tough one. May or may not start one of those defenders in the back. It'll depend on my transfer options that I'll get to in a little bit. Bowen, Aston Villa, like I said, after this week, Bowen looks great. Fixture run's great. And Mbama's pretty much, it's this week, then done. So I think Mbama's going off my team, and it's the same with Sterling. He may or may not even make my squad this week. Diaby's a solid hold going forward. Great fixture run, especially if you don't have Watkins. Solid hold. And then Madison has just been steady. He had a break during the international break. Didn't play too much, or if at all, I think. So it was a solid hold there. So we've moved up to the strikers. Man, did I just want to have Darwin be okay. It always happens. I just love the guy, and I just bring him in, and then something's going to happen. So I really have to think this one out because he wasn't in my transfer plans, and he might be someone I just hold out for this week just to see what happens, and maybe I don't even start him. Something I need to consider. But he just got some huge upside. I just really wish I had some better news on him. So Awaniyi is flagged. He's going to be out for a while, so it doesn't mean I would get rid of him this week just based on not a lot of us own him, so I don't see too much of a price change on him. And then Gusto is just Gusto. He's just going to stay there unless something like I'm in dire straits, right? So looking at my transfer plans, let's go look at them. So talking about transfers for this week. Now, I'm in a different situation than probably all of us because a lot of us are going to be rolling. I have 2 free transfers, and I don't have Salah. And I have some question marks on Darwin now. So to get Salah, I want to just look at what that would look like. It would take me 2 weeks because I'm not willing to pay the -4 to bring him in this week. So I would need to make 1 move possibly this week and then 2 moves next week. So Awaniyi would have to drop down to Archer to free up some funds. And then I would be looking at the transfers of Mbamo and Sterling. So Mbamo I'm going to hold this week no matter what. And then it's just the decision whether I do the 2 transfers this week or next week. Sterling has an awful fixture run, so it would have to be like Sterling down to something like a Hwang, which I really do like him. I want to talk about him more. And then I could upgrade Mbamo to Salah. I would have just a little bit left in the bank, and I can do that. So that's basically one option. Now, if I decide not to go Salah, what can I get if I don't have Salah? And it kind of works out this way. I'll have a little bit more in the bank so I can kind of upgrade my ace attacker, but it really comes down to me having Saka and possibly Odegaard or somewhere in that range. So to me, would I rather have Saka and Odegaard or Salah and Hwang? And that's really the decision I'm probably going to wait until close to the deadline to make, but that's really what I'm weighing for this week. Before I say goodbye for this game week 9, there are a couple punts I want to talk about. So Hwang, that we just kind of spoke about a minute ago, is someone so cheap, 5.4. He's the striker for Wolves. Now, they don't score a lot of goals, but when they do score, he's involved. He's kind of like Neto, but he's going to be scoring goals instead of just assisting. And he's so cheap, so he's a great enabler. And then also Gordon. Gordon is probably, a lot of us are thinking about him just based off of, he's now coming off his suspension. He's so cheap, and he's a good player if you're looking to bring in Salah as that counterpart to it, because you're going to have to subtract to add, basically. So those are really my two key ones. I know others have talked about Palmer and Neto, but I really do like Hwang and Gordon if I'm going to pick out of those 4 players. Well, that's it for this episode for Game Week 9. Please make sure you tune in next week for Game Week 10, as I'll be going over some wildcard options. And then before you go, make sure you subscribe and have a good week.